Our next speaker is Professor Manus, who will come and present his reflections on Genesis 1:28.
Good afternoon, brothers and sisters. Is it afternoon or evening? Yeah. My text is Genesis 1, verse 28, which reads in its Hebrew original, Vayomer lachem Elohim, Peru urvu, umil'u et ha'aretz, a ship shoha urdu bidgad hayam, uve of hashashamayim, uve kol haya haromeset al ha'aretz. And that reads in English, God blessed them, saying, be fruitful and multiply, feed the earth and subdue it, have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air, and over all living things that move on the earth. Right. Aware of the crass degradation and exploitation of African flora and fauna arising from oil explorations, spillage, and reckless lumbering activities of adventurers, I wish to join the many other theologians who in recent times have seriously drawn attention to ecological and environmental issues in our world. And the scholars are mentioned there, and they are put well down on the footnote, as well as many other contemporary theologians, including the numbers that I have outlined and mentioned there, including my humble self, Manus, in 2010, we have addressed ourselves to the increasing visible degradation of nature and the abuse of the human habitat. These theologians have challenged us African Catholic biblical theologians to struggle to push off the ecological apocalypse that threatens to descend on the African continent and on earth in general. Our faith communities are to be alerted of the dangers posed by the exploitative tendency of humankind. We have a duty to invite our communities and the people of God to recognize, quote, the hierarchy of human over non-human nature as a relationship of ontological and moral value. In other words, I quote again, the right of the human to treat the non-human as private property and material wealth to be exploited, as is being done in the Niger Delta region of Nigeria, and especially in an area called Baezi of Ohaji Egbama local government area of Imo State of Nigeria, where there has occurred the most recent roast of human beings created in the image and likeness of God due to mishaps from illegal mining activities by rogues must no longer go unchallenged. We can also call, from the Christological perspective, for a halt of the desecration of the environment in the name of the cosmic Christ, such as was initiated by McCarthy 1991 and Saint-Hilaire 1995. Content of interpretation. Despite wide world efforts to checkmate the effects of climate change here in Africa, the sin of senseless destruction of the natural world continues unabatedly to be committed. This is largely due to the fact that our generation possesses a nonchalant attitude towards environmental health. In short, there is no serious action plan by environmental activists, NGOs, and some natural scientists against the predictions of an ecological doomsday. The environmental degradation and the pollution of the flora and fauna of For example, a place in Nigeria, Owaza in Abia State, telecast on the Nigerian Television Authority Network by 9 o'clock a.m. on 27th February 2009 was indeed a tip of the iceberg. The pollution of a river in Benue State of Nigeria with cyanide by a cassava processing company is outrageous. How about the ecological degradation in the Niger Delta of South Nigeria? Years of neglect of the environment of the oil-producing areas of Africa has left those regions of Africa threatened by environmental hazards. The case of Ogoniland in southern Nigeria is paramount. The Ogoni cleanup campaign is initiated as a concerned call on the federal government of Nigeria, the oil and gas industries, and the surrounding communities to embark on a comprehensive cleanup of the region and to take a coordinated action to eradicate all forms of illegal oil bunkering, crude oil theft, and artisanal refining of stolen crude oil that cause widespread oil contamination of Ogoni land. Could the region's poverty and environmental pollution not explain why the youth and some other bandits or pundits there have become so restive? Do we have to pretend ignorance that what is happening in the region cannot be likened to the novelist's dictum, water, water everywhere, but not any drop to drink? Most African forest ecosystems are suffering constant degradation and destruction, resulting in the extinction of rare species of trees, animals, and medicinal plants. Places of natural beauty like the Obudu Cattle Range in Cross River State of Nigeria, the Lake Victoria waterfalls in Livingstone, Zambia, one of the world's largest waterfalls, are now destabilized. The Lake Nakuru Wildlife Resort in Nakuru County and the Masai Mara in Narok, both in Kenya, as well as the Serengeti National Park that hosts the second largest terrestrial mammals in the world, in fact, recognized as the 7 wonders of Africa, have become recklessly despoiled. Explorations and degradation of these productive ecosystems which God has given Africa are denying Africans of the chance to enjoy a healthy biosphere. Do we talk of industrial emissions and agricultural pollutants dumped into our soil by way of chemical fertilizers that have continued to poison the free air our people breathe, with the hazardous consequences of the depletion of the ozone layer that triggers global warming? My research beams its searchlight on the flaring of gas from the Nigerian oil wells and on the constant pipelines vandalizations and the illegal oil bunkering all over the south-south regions of Nigeria. For example, the recent inferno that engulfed an illegal refinery site led to the death of over 100 persons engaged in crude oil theft in Obaze town in Ohaji Egbema local government area of Imo State in southern Nigeria. The leakage of toxic gas caused environmental havoc and inestimable hazards to other surrounding Nigerian populations. The channeling of wastewater into rural streams and rivers, and the constant blockage of gutters and sewage systems in our urban areas with polythene or plastic bags, alias nylon, in Nigeria, provide mosquito breeding grounds. So much so that the government's program, Roll Back Malaria, are definitely neutralized. Indiscriminate increase in the population of people due to migration to Africa's major cities has become so alarming. The volume of vehicular traffic, jams, and the level of the emissions of carbon monoxide have resulted in the spread of diseases like lung cancer, asthma, chronic bronchial infections, and cardiac disorders. In Africa alone, the tropical forest, the size of Senegal, is being destroyed each year. How about what the churches are saying? At the 1972 UN conference at Stockholm, Sweden, the WCC Commission of the Churches in International Affairs challenged Christian faithful and their churches to recognize the magnitude of the environmental problem and its catastrophic consequences for the oikumene. As people of faith, we are not challenged by the consequences of climate change in our world today. Earth-friendly church people and their theologians have initiated and conducted many seminars on these matters. But this being the context of interpretation, I would like to go to the exegetical part of my text. The structure of Genesis 1 is found within Genesis 1, 24, 31. The text under study literally belongs to Genesis 1, 24 to 31, a text that draws our attention to the narration of the creation of terrestrial creatures, human beings, and God's satisfaction and joy with his creation. Following on that, we look at verses 27 to 28. In this unit, stress is laid on God's creation of humankind as male and female persons. That is, the human race as a whole. He endows and blesses humankind with reproductive capacity so that he does not have to come down regularly to create persons. Procreation is therefore conferred as divine gift, and by that means, humankind is charged with the responsibility of multiplying to feed the earth. I recognize before me that I have here a 6th century BC text, that which followed the Babylonian exile. According to John J. Collins, quote, the editor who placed this account at the beginning of Genesis presupposed the Yahweh's creation account found in Genesis 2 to 3. The priestly account is not the whole story. It is created to supplement the Yahweh's account to forestall a negative interpretation of the human situation which could be derived from Genesis 3. For Collins, if this is correct, then the priestly account must have been composed after the Yahweh's account. The notion that the earth was waste and void before Yahweh created it seems to have been current among the members of the faith community of the Jewish or Hebrew people before it was incorporated in the priestly narrative. It seems to have relied on the Babylonian myth of the Enuma Elish in order to provide insight into a cosmic scenario that he portrays in a highly artistic creation. Creation comes into being when God imposes order on non-personal chaos as he sets light into being. I will not ignore verse 27 on the high point of the verse, as the high point of the verse is determined by the verb bara, to create. The verb is used in the Old Testament to connote divine activity. The creation of man and woman signified in the collective term Adam, humankind, is the climax of God's creation. It is noted that the priestly author attributes great dignity to human beings, both male and female. Apart from the above singular honor, humankind is enjoined to subdue the earth. Unfortunately, human sovereignty over creation has not always been a blessing, but often it has been one of abuse. The verb ship shuha, Carl imperative in the plural notation, second person, with the suffix be in its third person singular from kabash, to subdue, verse 28d, by no means implies a command or a permission to exploit or misuse and degrade nature. Besides, God gave humans the right to radar, to rule, or have dominion over the fish, the birds, and all animate creatures on earth. The terms subdue and dominion have continued to evoke so much debate among scholars and preachers alike. Humanity is granted dominion over creation, the rest of creation. The inference can thus be drawn that the priestly story of creation is notably humanistic. The African Bible commentators who had interpreted the text with African eyes observed that to subdue the earth does not mean exploitation. It means rather that as God's stewards, they have to take good care of what God has created and entrusted to them by using and maintaining the environment in such a way that the earth, plant life, animal life, and human beings can coexist in a harmonious relationship that promotes God's gift of life. From the analysis, perhaps on Genesis 1:28 and its context, I wish to argue that the creation theology of the book of Genesis established both humans and animals as living beings on earth. Both are blessed with the capacity to procreate and reproduce their kinds. As we have remarked earlier, unlike the other creatures, humankind is obliged to rule and to have dominion over all the living things that move on earth. But tragically, as he correctly opines, the passage has all too often been distorted and used to justify the dominion of both human beings and nature. In Genesis 1:28, the priestly author recasts the mood of the neighboring contemporary narratives. Humans become created in the image of God, God conferred with royal attributes and given the gift of dominion, rather to rule over nature, the fish, the birds, and all animate creatures on earth. From a thoroughgoing scrutiny of the passage, I would strongly argue that the creation story is formulated with a high anthropology of the dominion symbol, while nature carries with it the metaphysics of domination. It is notable that what the Hebrew author teaches us here with the verb is that it is a divine injunction to handle nature responsibly so that it can be productive to support life on earth. One can then assert that dominion in its textual context emphasizes the sense of responsibility. You may therefore wish to agree with me that by the term dominion, the text invites us to become good managers of the planet who interact wisely, justly, and caringly with the other creatures. Indeed, as persons who will, as much as possible, intervene aggressively to protect the ecosystem from further interventions to avoid being on course with ecocide. Conclusion. The foregoing discourse reveals a lot of data required to conclude this paper. The one verse I have critically and exegetically attempted to examine, though with scanty literature available to me in my workplace, draws my attention to the fact that Genesis 1:28 does not yield any evidence to support the exploitation, abuse, and degradation of nature. Such human exploitative tendencies today would have been viewed by ancient Hebrews as insolencies to God's benevolent commission. The ambition to gain mastery of nature was not considered a value in traditional Hebrew setting. In fact, nature was held as far beyond man's control, which on its own could sometimes even devastate and destroy mankind in its civilizations. Today, it is a known fact that global warming has disrupted weather patterns. In recent times, there have been extremes in heat and several incidents of severe storms in many parts of Africa. Garbage dumping, illegal oil bunkering, bushfires have degraded much of Africa's arable land. The constant flooding of our cities and rural villages and the menace of gully erosions remain cases in point. For the Hebrews, whose Bible we read and believe in, the earth is the Lord's property, and we humans are mere creatures charged with the responsibility to care for her in God's name. Herein originates the notion of stewardship. The author of the book of Genesis assures us that God commissioned human beings to participate in the continuing process of creation through legitimate procreation and industry. Christian doctrines on creation have neither misconceived the Hebrew creation theology nor denied it at all. In Orthodox Christian tradition, dominion had not been taken to mean domination. Jeremy Cohn has reassured us that nowhere in early Christian desert fathers, Celtic saints, Francis of Assisi, and medieval theologian sources have we learned that dominion meant permission to dominate and exploit the environment. It is better to appreciate the fact that the notions of the divine images.
We'll have to stop here, the time is up.
Is that?
Yeah. So thanks very much for this. This is a very long conclusion. You can see the fruits of all this research are endless. So it's thanks very much. Who is going to respond to this? Yeah.
Il n'y a pas de répondant en tant que tel. Parce que j'ai appris à la dernière minute que l'abbé Mondele ne venait pas. Alors, donc the floor is open for questions for discussion. Okay.
The floor is open.
Just a little comment. Just to join what we've been discussing this morning about desacralization and rendering nature secular. Like the Ogoni people, like the delegate just mentioned, Ogoni people who really respect nature, you know, maybe the term sacred needs to be reviewed, because sometimes sacred is too linked to the divine. Sacred also might be meaning just don't tamper with it. Like a delegate mentioned, African society tend to respect les génies de la nature, meaning the spirits of nature. So maybe by respecting that spirit of nature, we are not sacralizing nature, but just not tamper with it. So that maybe there's a meaning to be fine-tuned into what is sacred or not, so that we can, you know, respect that nature. Thank you.
Well, in traditional religion and society of Africans, before the coming of the Europeans, surely the African persons had a holistic respect for nature. We used to call it transcendence of nature. In this transcendence of nature, the African ancestors had always recognized the handwork of God in nature, even the existence of God. There may be serious respect and fear of the divinities, and they claim that they inhabit such a tree or forest or river. But invariably, when you provide a phenomenological analysis and study of their belief systems, you discover that indeed what they are respecting is the sanctity of nature. The sanctity of nature, God's shrine, God's home, God's sanctuary. And so many of these places even still exist today in parts of Africa. I'm sure here too, in Mauritius, there are places your ancestors used not to penetrate. There are places ancestors would say women would not enter this forest or that river or so. And so this value had continued when Christianity now came and also taught us of how to respect nature, giving us the teaching that in nature and its sanctity, God dwells. It was easily accommodated and absorbed as a Christian doctrine. I mean, that is very important. We begin from there often to do some of our African theology of faith and belief. Thank you very much.
Thank you. There's time for one more question, I think. Right.
Thank you, Prof, for the paper, and also for putting a lot of emphasis on the oil bunkering. I think I'm speaking because I live in the Niger Delta. I think the Ogoni issue has been overflogged because it is already being handled. But the real problem today, and the main problem today, is oil bunkering, which is carried out by criminals, organized crime. The problem is not so much again the oil companies, but now organized crime, where people open the pipelines, the oil wells to steal oil, and in the process pollute the environment. We suffered this for years, for many months, and the way out, I think that's the real challenge. How do we get out of that serious situation? Because it is the greatest pollutant of the environment, this criminally organized bunkering, which is also internationally organized. You'll be surprised the people who are involved in this crime, so that we can shout and shout, but the syndicates are very well organized. So that's the real issue for today. I think Ogoni one is already is a foregone, something being handled, but this bunkering is a real thing today. Thank you.
Yeah, I wish to thank you. You have equally embellished part of my vision. I use those areas of Nigeria to highlight the charge or commission in Genesis 1:28 that we should respect the nature, the earth, Mother Earth must be protected. But over the years, adventurers, they call them, materialistic corporations have come and spoiled our environment, spilling oil everywhere. You need to see it. In fact, I thought of bringing photos to show the damage done by what is calling oil bunkering, breaking the oil pipe and oil floating, and then doing their own refinery, described as illegal refinery. As they do this illegal refinery, sometimes it goes on fire, and the workers are burnt, the environment burnt. They scoop up water and show you fish. They are all dead and blackened. The people that used to supply fish to the Nigerian population can no longer produce fish, not to talk of other grains. Indeed, the environment is polluted so too in Angola, so too coming in Ghana. One day it may reach here because looking at the way oil floats, this island, surely there are some wonderful things under the earth of Mauritius. But you must be careful too to avoid bringing these people who, instead of being beach combers, they become beach pollutants and so on. True, the bunkering is internationally organized. Nigeria is said to have lost 1 billion barrels of oil in a couple of months, and reaching to about 300 billion US dollars lost to the government by these foreign conglomerates who put out big ships in the sea and use the small yachts and boats to bring the oil these people have broken and stolen from the pipelines and take to them. And the Nigerian government will say, check oil theft. They are not able to check oil theft because some of them are involved, the so-called ministers. There is a minister called Timipri Silva. I blame him for most of the things happening in those parts of Nigeria. He is not careful. He is not. You bring the military, the navy, and station them to check this. They are there. If they give them big money, dollars, they let the bunkerers pass and go to that big ship in the high sea and pour oil for 1 week or two. The ship moves with 300 barrels away, snatching away big money from our country. But not only that they are taking the money of the nation out, but the environment has been degraded, saturated with pollutants from the ground, and they are not able to clean them. As you mentioned in my paper, Ogoni, one specific area, government and international organizations have forced them to clean up Ogoni land, and they are trying their best. But still, wishy-washy. But the oil is being mined in the North Sea oil in Scotland, and go there and see. It is clean and sparkling. But when they come, the same company, the Shell, what is that Italian one? Ajib. When they come to Nigeria or Africa, they do hanky-panky things and ruin our environment. So taking this story from Genesis, you say, what can we do? What I'm saying is, I called it a clarion call on theologians and biblical scholars to use the Bible lesson that we are not permitted to dominate, but to be responsible stewards. So we as theologians can talk from our own viewpoints, from our own angle, from the churches. We should make people, all those owners and supporters of the bunkerers are church members. They come to church and they bring big money and donate in the church, then we keep silent. Recently, NNPC, Nigeria Producing Oil Company, has said that.
Yeah, I think. Thank you very much, Professor Manus.
Thank you.
And I'm sure all of you would like to keep discussing with him during our tea break now.
Yes.